This play has an 83% chance to win in tonight's Monday Night Football game, and I'm going to show you exactly what it is. Now, before we get to that, let's check in and see exactly how the last couple days have went. Now, let's go ahead and start on the 15th. 15th, we had the Panthers under 7, which if you watch one of my videos for the NHL totals, you'll see how I came up with that, and we ended up hitting that one. Then we had J.P. Crawford to get a hit, which was plus 100. It's probably because he was batting 9th in the game. But he ended up getting a hit for us and literally doubled up our money in that play. Then we had Tage Thompson to get 1+ points. Another YouTube video that you guys can check out exactly how I came up with that. He was able to get that one in that game pretty easy. Then we had Minicucci, college football for Delaware, to go over 225+. He threw for like 400 yards in this game, so that was an easy win for us. Then we had the Sabres money line in NHL that was plus 102 that we ended up hitting for 2,000 as well. Then we followed that up with college football. We had UTEP under 52.5. This one was a sweat for sure, but we still ended up covering and being able to win that. Then on the 16th, we went to McKinnon to get 1 point. Colorado scored 4 goals in that game, but he was not a part of any of that, so we took an L there. And we went back to J.P. Crawford again, and he was minus 140 this time and ended up going 0 for 3 with a walk, so didn't help us there. Then we worked our way to the 17th, where we had Kaprizov to get 1+ point. He didn't do anything in that game whatsoever. They only scored 1 goal. Capitals shut him down. We ended up taking a loss there. Then college football Saturday, we ended up taking Georgia over 50.5. That one was pretty easy. That one cashed like literally the beginning of the third quarter. Then we had Boise State minus 5.5. That was another one that was easy. They ended up blowing out UNLV in the second half. Then we had Toledo under 55.5. That was a sweat because it landed exactly on 55. So we barely won that one. But we also had Toledo minus 20.5 in that game. And that one was pretty easy. We were able to get that. All right, then we had TCU over 58.5. That one came through pretty easily as well, even though there was like 5 delays in that game, and the game took like 10 hours. And then in that same game, we had Hoover, the quarterback for TCU, to get 270+ passing yards, and he ended up not getting there because TCU started routing him. And then, like I said, there was a bunch of stops in the game where it just kind of halted the flow of the game. Then we go to Sunday. We had Justin Jefferson, 60+ receiving yards. That was an easy money play that we got there. Then we got Jonathan Taylor, 70+ rushing yards. Easy money on that one as well. And then Jaden Daniels, we had 200+ to wrap up the weekend. And he was cruising. He had like 150 yards or whatnot, literally at halftime. And he looked like he was ready to go. And he ended up getting hurt. So is what it is, but still a successful last couple days. And we can go ahead and cruise back to the dashboard here. So ended up making a total profit of $3,805. Hit at 72%. We went 13-5, so pretty solid there with the average odds of minus 196. Now let's go ahead and get into today's play. All right, so let's go ahead and get into today's play. Today's play, we're going to talk about Baker Mayfield. That's who we're going to be eyeballing here, all right? We'll be eyeing Baker. Now, what we're going to be looking at here is his prop for his passing yards. All right, we're going to be looking for the passing yards, and let's go through each level. I'm going to show you guys exactly how to decipher through each level what type of edge you got in these type of bets. All right. So first thing is first. How do we know to even take Baker Mayfield here for anything? All right. There's a couple key stats that I want you to pay attention to that I look at. All right. So the first thing is going to be yards per completion. All right. Yards per completion defensively. So they're playing Detroit. All right. Detroit is 24th in yards per completion given up. All right, they give up 10.5 yards per completion. All right, now let's take a look at the flip side. Let's look at Tampa and Baker. What does he average? What is his yards per completion offensively? Okay, they are third. Tampa is third, and they are at 11.4. Okay, so what we have here is a case of a defense that likes to give up a decent amount per completion, which means they're susceptible to big plays in the secondary. And we have an offense that likes to throw that deep ball. So what is that a recipe for? I think you can understand exactly just from that what the recipe's for. But we're going to get to that. And I'm going to go through the levels with you so that way you guys could see exactly how this works. Now let's take a look at Baker Mayfield's completions per game on average. All right, for this season, he's averaging 21.5 completions per game. Now, if you take that, we times that by what Detroit gives up per, what are we going to get there? All right, this is math. All right, guys, we're going to get 225 yards. That is what you're going to get. Coincidence that what? The line for his passing yards is 225. All right? I just showed you right there how the sportsbooks come up with their odds. Now, we're going to break it down to put this into our favor, though, so that way we have a good shot at winning a bet here. Now, let's go ahead and we're going to go through the levels of his yardage here to see which level gives us an edge or gives us the biggest edge. So let's start with 225. All right, 225 plus yards. He's been able to hit that 4 out of 6 times this season, which gives us a 66% overall percentage. Now, his odds for this right now are minus 175, giving us a 63% implied probability, giving us a plus 3% edge. Okay? And that is at 225 plus, which is pretty much, that's the line that's at a lot of sports books right now. All right, that's kind of anything above this, of course, you don't want to go for, okay? That's why I'm using this as an example. So at 225 plus, we got a 3% edge. Now let's work our way down the ladder a little bit here. Now let's go ahead and go to 200 plus. All right, just for him pretty much to throw for 200 yards. What do we got there? He's hit that number 5 out of 6 times this year. Now that gives us an 83% overall probability. Now his odds at this number are minus 320. All right, that right there is now giving us a 76% implied probability. So now that gives us a 7% edge at the 200 plus level. Now let's go ahead and go with one more here that we're going to look at. All right, let's look at 210 plus. Now he's been able to achieve this, the same thing as the 200 level, 5 out of 6 times at 83%. But now what's the difference with this? The difference with this is your odds are a little bit different. Your odds here are minus 245, which is giving us an implied probability now of 71%, thus giving us a 12% edge at this level. So now let's go ahead and write those out. So at 225 plus, we got a 3% edge. At 210, we have a 12% edge. And then at 200 plus, we have a 7% edge. All right, so for Baker Mayfield's passing yards to go over, we give ourselves a 3% edge at 225, a 12% edge at what? 210, and a 7% edge at 200. So what does this tell you right now? This tells you that obviously the biggest edge would be the middle play here, which is minus 245 at 210. The safest play would be at right here, 200 plus at minus 320. And the most risky play out of all of it would be at 225, which is minus 175. And that right there is how you find your edge in Monday Night Football. Now, one thing I do want to discuss with you that takes it a little step further here is when you're looking at the quarterback, one thing you do want to pay attention to is the offensive line. How consistent do they allow sacks, and how does the defense come in? All right, are they very aggressive? Do they get a lot of sacks? Now, if we take a look at this, Detroit is 5th in sacks per game. All right, so they get to the QB. That could be a problem here, right? Because this is your quarterback, and he's going to have time in the pocket to be able to throw. So he's definitely going to be most likely under a little bit of pressure here. It's not going to be smooth where he's going to be able to sit in the pocket all day. Now, Tampa Bay, as for giving up sacks, how good is their offensive line? Well, their offensive line is 10th, all right, for giving up sacks. So the offensive line is not too bad. It's decent. But Detroit will cause a little bit of disruption here. So for me, personally, which one would I go with here? Because of this scenario here, I would always go with the most conservative play there. Because now you got a 7% edge at 200 plus. Even with some pressure, he still could probably get 200 plus. And he also might have Mike Evans and Ejbuka back. So that could definitely be a plus for sure for Mayfield. So he has some options, more options to throw to. But overall, this is what you're looking at for Monday Night Football.